I'm Ryan Block. This is the Open Heart Collective, and my guest today is apparently an Instagram and Facebook Live newbie. Welcome, Kristen. It's great to have you here. I'm glad that you chose us to be your first. It's an honor, and it's happened a lot, which is why I kind of made that remark before we started. But yeah, so for those of you guys who don't know who the show is, see, I've been gone for a couple weeks. I'm all sorts of rusty. For what this show is, the show is called the Open Heart Collective. It's a live, raw, real mental.
Keep going.
Wow, I have been off for a couple weeks, and this is what happens. I can't speak right. Anyways, this is why we do it live, because Ryan fucks up and everybody else gets to see. Anyways, this is the Open Heart Collective, where we do a live, raw, real look at mental health by sharing amazing stories from incredible individuals who've been through hell and back and are still here. So throughout tonight's episode, what we'll do is we'll hear Kristen's story. We will learn a little bit about what are some of those moments of dark times that she's had to overcome, or those obstacles that she's dealt with throughout her life, and what she's done to move through those moments. And then last but certainly not least, we'll learn about what's exciting in her world now, because oftentimes around the subject of mental health, the conversation stops at the struggle, or the conversation stops at the darkness. And we want to show those who are coming up behind us, those who are still struggling, that there is hope and that there is light on the other side of the darkness. So with no further ado, and now that I finally got my chops back, because again, I've been gone for a couple weeks, Kristen, welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here on the show, and you're making me feel better. So you're making me very comfortable.
Yeah, my little bit of fuckery will help you. That's okay.
No, I appreciate it. Truly. So as you had mentioned before, this is my first live, and previously I've talked with other people about going live, and I was like, not yet. So here we are, and I'm sure I'll have a bunch of mess ups myself. So
see, that's the great thing though. We are all human, right?
Yes.
We all get the ability to connect with people. We all make mistakes in day-to-day life, right?
Yep.
We have the ability to make mistakes live and connect with other human beings that by chance also happen to make mistakes. So that's really also just my ploy, that I don't care that I make mistakes, because they're just lessons and I learn from them. So
yep. Exactly. Yep.
So for those of you guys who are like, I've never been on this show before, I don't know what to expect. It's really just an hour of Kristen and I's conversation. We'll obviously field questions if people have questions throughout, but really it's about giving her a platform to share her story, what she's gone through, and then some clever jokes and a little bit of cursing. So for those of you guys who are like, I don't like swearing and all that, like, this is not the show for you, because at the end of the day too, we are also kind of human. And sometimes when we talk about this is not the pretty conversations that you see in a lot or hear in a lot of other podcasts. This is the raw, real, gritty conversations that nobody really wants to talk about and kind of just shove under the rug, because they're not glamorous. They're not entrepreneurship. They're not all of these other buzzwords and hashtags that the world is nowadays. This is all the human shit. So
well put. Yes.
Right. With no further ado, I would really, I know I've had the ability to hear a little bit of your story, but I'm sure that everybody who's tuning in now and down the road, once this is on YouTube and everything else, will want to hear more. So the floor is yours.
All right. So sharing my story, there are some people who know some of my story. There's a lot of people who don't. And I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. And because what this show is all about is really to talk about mental health and to break the stigma. So a little bit of my background. I'm going to try to look at both cameras here.
It's a skill that's definitively learned. Yeah,
I'm a quick learner. So
good.
I grew up with foster brothers and sisters, and I count myself blessed. My parents and I, we moved to a children's home when I was about 5 years old, and we started out with foster boys, and we housed probably about anywhere from 5 to 7 boys. And we did that for about 3 years. And we had an incident where one of the boys attempted sexual harassment. So then we switched to girls. They attempted sexual harassment on me, but so I don't.
It's okay. We got an hour. Breathe.
Got an hour. All right.
All right.
So anyway, that happened. So we switched to girls, and we housed about anywhere from 5 to 6 foster girls. And we did that until I was about 14. So I have been exposed to many different walks of life. And as I said, it's been a blessing because you get to meet these individuals who some might be troubled. Some are coming from a really bad home situation. There are some who just don't have any parents or anybody to take care of them. And everybody has a story. Everybody, I don't care who you are, you have a story. So I really got to witness all of that, and my parents taking care of these kids and growing up with these kids. And I still stay in touch with a lot of these kids. And they're a blessing. And just I recall having a conversation. I would say my early 20s, where there's another house parent who had kids of his own, and him and his wife were also housing some foster kids. And he had asked me, Kristen, how do you feel about, us raising our kids alongside these foster kids? He had a concern because of all the different walks of life these kids were coming from. And I told him, you know what, looking back, I couldn't have asked for a better upbringing, because for me, it's shaped me into who I am today. So now I see, I see people, and I'm able to, I'm pretty good with my discernment. I see people, and I see everybody, like I said, has their own story, and they face their own challenges. And you just have to take a step back and hear them out, and don't be quick to judge. So I definitely, my upbringing has helped shape me into who I am today. Now, for my personal story, and a lot of people don't know about this, but when I was a junior, I started having in
high school, in college, in
thank you.
In high school. I do.
In high school, when I was a junior in high school, I started having intrusive thoughts. And intrusive thoughts is just how it sounds. There are thoughts that are intrusive. They're very unwanted. I didn't know that at the time. I just knew I was having thoughts, really, really bad thoughts that put me in a dark place. And I started going to this downward spiral of depression. And I fought my way through that.
Good.
So to fast forward a little bit, and I'll go into this a little bit more in depth, but my son, my youngest, who is 10, on his journey, helped me realize what it was I had been struggling with for so long with intrusive thoughts. So I don't know how many of you out there have dealt with intrusive thoughts, or if you even know what intrusive thoughts are, but they are a form of OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. So and if you don't mind, I actually printed off some stuff I'd like to read, because I think they did a great job with
the floor is yours right now, so go for it.
Fantastic. So there's this online mental health community, a support group called The Mighty. And I've been following them, and I've got their app, and I'm signed up to their email and all that sort of thing. But the editors who manage that website are really good about engaging the community to open up and share their own personal journey on this platform. It's awesome. And there was this article that they did that I would like to read to you guys, which talks about intrusive thoughts. Okay. So what they do is they go in to briefly explain what intrusive thoughts are. And then what they do is they ask the community to share some of their own intrusive thoughts. I won't share all of them, but I did pick out some that I've had myself or had similar thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go ahead and read this to you guys. So to some degree, many people experience intrusive thoughts. They're unwanted images or words that cross your mind, making you wonder, where the hell did that come from? But they do exist on a spectrum. While some people are able to brush these off, others have a harder time letting them go. They become persistent, repetitive, and can affect the everyday quality of their lives. And it's so very true. Because with OCD, it's their thoughts that just circle around, that loop around in your head. They don't go away. So these thoughts that, anybody could have, typically like they just go away. But somebody with OCD, it just keeps playing over and over and over again.
Right.
So then the compulsions come into place. So for people,
the other side of the puzzle.
The other side, yes. So for people with OCD, these thoughts can be even more graphic and persistent, leading to compulsions devised to get rid of them. So just an example, well, will my mother die today? I better brush my teeth 3 times just to get the thought out of my head so she doesn't. Or would I hurt my baby? You better jump every time I see a baby just to be sure, just in case. So they're silly thoughts, and you know that, but you start devising these compulsions to get rid of those thoughts. So you have the external, and then you have the internal OCD. So with the intrusive thoughts, with me, what they call pure O, that's PURE-O, it's purely internal compulsions. So it's a person who experiences the compulsion thoughts. They're not visible. Well, you might hear about people with OCD where they're compulsively washing their hands to get rid of germs, or they're checking, which means, just an example, I know with my youngest son, every time he used to close a door, he'd go back so many times just to touch the door. It's called checking before he moved on. So, but with pure O, it's strictly internal. So your compulsions are not visible. They're not external.
Interesting.
So I'm going to share some of these thoughts that people do have and that are just stuck in their head. But I do want to read this first before I move on, because this article, which again, I didn't write, I pulled this from the online community called The Mighty, and I will be more than happy to share the link with you guys.
I'll make sure to put it in the show notes afterwards as well. So, because then, and just interject for a moment, I'm sure that there to a degree, because I don't believe up to this point in time throughout all the seasons that we've really had a wide open discussion on OCD. We've had a lot of other things within the mental health spectrum, but not, for the best of my knowledge, not to the best of my recollection, I should say. We haven't had anybody that's dealt with at least this open about OCD. So this is going to be an interesting dialogue. So definitely continue, and we'll add more show notes and everything as well. So
great. So before I dive into some of these comments, again, what the editors did at The Mighty is they will reach out to the community and ask them for feedback. So these comments are real thoughts from real people.
Okay.
Yes. So let me read this off to you guys real quick. It's important to remember that thoughts are not facts or actions. And many people feel unnecessary shame and guilt over the thoughts in their head that they have no control over. So naming intrusive thoughts and taking away that shame can be the first step in learning how to manage them instead of letting them control you. And some of the thoughts that I'm getting ready to share with you guys, they're hard to hear. They're going to be hard to hear.
Mm-hmm.
But people who have intrusive thoughts, they're not dangerous and they're not likely to act upon them. If you have thoughts that disturb you, know that there's nothing wrong with you. There is help. And I'll kind of go into some of the preconceived or judgments that people have regarding some of these thoughts. So the first one I have, and again, real people, real thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I have random thoughts of hurting myself badly. I'll be chopping vegetables with a big knife, and my brain will go, you could just put that through your hand. Of course, I never would, but it scares me.
Real quick. For those of you guys who are listening in the audio form or in the video form after, in any format, whether you're live with us or now, just in case, I want to note trigger warning, just in case.
Yes.
Anybody who's like, I should have prefaced that already. That's my mistake. But in the event that this is something that does trigger or would trigger you, make sure that you pause this and then fast forward, and then I'll make sure to note when that is in the notes for somebody who, if you are struggling with that, then you still get the ability to have the benefit of the content without having the potential trigger. So, all right, continue.
That's very important. Thank you. So, it scares me that my brain chooses to acknowledge that I could do such a thing. And it always comes at random times. Another one is, I'm not a violent person, but I used to get very violent, horrific, intrusive thoughts, which terrified me. It got to the point where I became phobic of knives and scissors. The phobia still lingers, but it's lessening. Another is, my children would be better off with a better mom. My husband only stays because I'm free daycare. No one loves me and would be better off if I just disappeared. And then just another example, if you put your hand on a hot stove or in the hot oven, or staple your hand, or put your pinky in the pencil sharpener, or stick a fork in the electrical socket. These are just thoughts that just pop in your head. You could be in the kitchen cooking, or you could be in a car driving, and all of a sudden you get these crazy thoughts that just pop into your head. And, a lot of people do have these thoughts, but again, they're fleeting. And before you even give it a second thought, it's out of your head already. But people with intrusive thoughts, they dwell on it because they're like, where did that thought come from? Why is it so graphic? And why does it keep playing over and over and over again in my head? Mm-hmm. And then you start developing these compulsions internally to try to get rid of them. And I know for me personally, when I would get these thoughts, I would start praying repetitively over and over in my head. It would be the same prayer over and over, but it got to the point where I was exhausting. And then I got to another point where I would, every time I'd have a thought, I would visualize just, ripping it out of my head and then just kind of flinging it away. And that seemed to help me get through it. But again, I didn't know what any of this stuff was, why I was having these thoughts. And it did take me a while to work through it. I recall having a conversation with myself, and I said, you know what? I know that these thoughts of mine, I would never, ever do. And if I have to fight every day, every hour, every second for the rest of my life to combat these thoughts, then so be it. So then I just started practicing some of the compulsions, like I said, visualizing, just kind of, ripping the thoughts and flinging them out of my head. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that helped me too was to stay busy. I know when so in high school, I was a server, and when I was serving on the floor, that was one of the things that was like my happy place, because my mind was so busy with other things, with serving the customer and all of this other stuff. I didn't have time to think about these intrusive thoughts. I wasn't thinking about them. Mm-hmm. So anyway, fast forward a little bit further, and, got married, had kids, still had the intrusive thoughts, but I was doing much better with coping with them. They didn't seem to stick around as often. And fast forward a little bit further,
you really like that fast forward button.
I know. You'll find out I really don't like talking about myself. So
this is your show. You got to talk about it.
But this is the first time I've opened up about it. And what's interesting, I'll say people don't like to talk about it. One, it's really tough. And the thoughts that you have, they are shameful to you. They're very taboo. And I could say growing up with a religious background, not that everybody's this way, but I believe that there are a lot of Christians who feel that if you think it, then you're going to carry it out, or there might be some evil harboring in your heart, or I don't know. I think growing up, you just kind of kept that to yourself because you didn't want to be judged by others. That's unfortunate, because that's the worst thing you can do is pretending there's nothing wrong and sugarcoating it and just kind of hiding it and keeping it to yourself. It builds up after a while. It will destroy you.
Right. And that's exactly why we have these conversations,
Yes.
right? Because the more that I've been getting involved in the mental health community, the more that I've spent time with the people at Hope for the Day and a couple other organizations, the more I've seen where the commonality is the fact that we've all experienced it. I mean, mental health is something that each and every one of us face. And then you look at it that 1 in 4 will have a diagnosed mental illness at some point in time in their life. I mean, there's 2 of us. I mean, look at the math. I mean, if there's half a dozen or more people listening then there's even more people that are going to be diagnosed with something. Now, that doesn't mean that there's others that the statistics are staggering, and we know that we're not alone. And it's just having the conversation to open up and release the stigma and move beyond it, because that's the goal. Anyways, keep going.
No, it's all very true. But I remember having a conversation with one of my parents just this past year about discovering what I had been dealing with, because I never told anybody. That was something I kept to myself and worked through myself, and that was a lonely journey. But I remember telling them and explaining some of the thoughts that I had, and they didn't want to believe me. They're like, really? I don't think you had those thoughts. Well, I did, actually, because I just think there's such a stigma surrounding some of these thoughts. We still believe that if people are having these thoughts, that they're actually going to carry them out. That's why they're called intrusive thoughts. They're very unwanted thoughts. It's not that we want them. They're unwanted.
Right.
I actually just told my husband this past year as well what I had been struggling with for all these years. So I had mentioned going fast forward to my youngest son, who is now 10. So this 2019 has been a crazy year, but my youngest son started exhibiting behavior where he was very frustrated to the point where he would fall down on the floor. I would say convulse, his whole body would just be so tense, and he'd lash around, bang his head on the floor, he'd punch himself in the face, and he would just say over and over again, "My head is stupid. My head is stupid." And me,
as a father of a 10-year-old son as well, I can only imagine.
Yeah. And for me, because I had been dealing with these thoughts for so long, I didn't know what they were, but I could tell you that this was something that was very scary for me to see my children inherit. That was the last thing I wanted. And I remember also one of my compulsions being praying over and over again, please don't let my kids end up with the thoughts that I had, you know?
Right.
So he would start doing this, and then I was on it. I would try to talk to him and just say, hey, I don't know what's going on, but you're not stupid. Your brain's not stupid. Trying to get him to open up to explain to me what was going on, which he had a very hard time doing. He was 10 years old, and to be honest, he didn't know what was going on. So we eventually got him in to see a therapist who referred us to a psychiatrist who referred us to another therapist, which is okay. No, it's actually been a blessing because of how quickly things turned. But got us into a children's hospital with another therapist who specializes in OCD. Because after these multiple conversations and just kind of explaining some of the behaviors he was exhibiting, like the checking I had mentioned, He would tend to lick things over and over again. He would also repeat things, so which is also another form of checking. So he would say something, and then he'd say it over and over and over again until it felt right to him.
Gotcha.
So we landed with a therapist within the children's hospital, and that we've been seeing regularly now, and it's been amazing. But throughout all this process, because I started to look into and research how I could help him, that's when I started reading about the intrusive thoughts, the pure O, internal OCD, and I was like, oh, that's me. And the fact that
when you read yourself on a piece of paper or on a computer screen, it's kind of terrifying. So I understand.
Yeah. So, but to have that, I'm going to call it a label, maybe a diagnosis, or knowing that you're not alone, and that there's people who struggle with the same thing, that was eye-opening to me. Because there for a while I thought I was the only one struggling with this.
All right, real quick pause. Anybody who's ever been suffering with mental health or mental illness, raise your hands if you felt you're alone. Because it's literally everybody. Because that at the end of the day is another situation having to do with mental health, right? Because you feel so culturally isolated because you can't talk about it, right? And access to resources in which you have the ability to talk about it. And this came up this past weekend when I was doing some training with Hope for the Day, where we were talking about just how social stigma is, right? And if what it would have been like, I mean, because I'm 36, what it would have been like growing up for me if I had gone to my parents and said, I'm sick, they're going to take me to the doctor, right? Versus, hey, I don't think my head's feeling okay. Like, and they're like, oh, you'll be fine, just rub some dirt on it, kind of type of a situation. Not to say that my parents aren't caring people, but that's just what they knew. So it's just, as we've moved beyond and as we've added more depth to the spectrum, we're getting there. It's a slow process, but we're getting there.
Yes.
So.
Yes. I would say the biggest challenge throughout all of this is maybe some of the resistance we were met with when we first started talking about professional help. Because I believe
resistance from resources or resistance from family members and other people.
Family members, just kind of going back to that whole old school mentality, and just the mentality of we don't talk about this. Don't know why you're having these thoughts, but we just don't talk about this. So let's just pretend.
It goes back to the aforementioned. These are the conversations that hide under the rugs for 80,000 years because nobody else wants to talk about them.
So then people start wondering, there is something wrong with me. Well, there is. It's a sickness, but there's nothing wrong with you per se. Because there's so many people. It's just like you had mentioned, if you got a cold, or there's just so many physical sicknesses out there that you don't even think about the mental.
Right.
It's the same.
And we don't, but one ties to the other, and that's another reason why this show exists in the first place. I been in the music industry for the last almost 10 years now, and we've had, I can't count just in the industry how many people we've lost over the time that I've been around. Then you add in and this was a staggering statistic from my hometown, where in 2018, from January to August, in one county, in one state in the country, in the US, we had 39 confirmed suicides. From January to August. This just obviously poses a problem. We're talking about, in 2018, there were over 800,000 completions around the world. Like this is something that if we don't talk about it, the problems get bigger.
Yep.
if we don't understand and we don't accept and we don't create safe spaces for people to be vulnerable, then to have these conversations and not be judged or not feel as if they're going to be judged for it. Because, and then I got hit with the staggering statistic. This is more or less to the parents out there, and knowing that you guys we have to have these checks with our kids. And because they're now reporting suicides at age 10
and younger. I've heard younger
and even younger. Yeah. And so when I heard back in November, when I heard the statistic that the ages of 10 to 34 was second only to accidents, was suicide for death in that age group. And then I heard that now it's less than that, and it's females. I'm like, holy hell, because not only do I have a 10-year-old son, but I have a 9-year-old daughter. And I'm just like, what the fuck kind of world are we living in? Because at the same point in time, like, I struggled with this growing up. Like, I was, while never clinically diagnosed, I was depressed. I was suicidal. I mean, 4 times I tried to take my own life. Thankfully, I didn't. But the fact of the matter is I did try. And it's because I grew up in a way where, oh, you're fine, just fucking walk it off.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't just walk off the way that you feel.
Yep.
And now other areas of that are obviously access to resources when there is a limited access to them and those sorts of things. And we're starting to have these conversations more, which is another reason why I support Hope for the Day in the way that I do. And I unintentionally wore their kind of their colors tonight. It was not intentional. I actually meant to put on their "It's Okay to Not Be Okay" hoodie. But at the same point in time, it's like the change that we want to see is on us to own. If we want to make this change, we have to be the ones to do it. Regardless of where we are, regardless of how quiet we think we are, regardless of how alone we must feel, it's on us to make that change. It's on us to actually start having these conversations, no matter how uncomfortable they are. But, yeah, and especially for the fact that all the parents out there of any kid 13 and under, or hell, 18 and under, like, we're in a different era now. And this mental health stuff, or this mental health as it's tied to social media and everything else, is just a whole other barrel of monkeys. But it's on us to make it better. We got to set the example for what we want our kids to see. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I'm stepping down from my soapbox now, and I'm going to hand the mic back to you, because I tend to pontificate at least once an episode, and apparently that was my time. But
it was good pontificating. No, it's really good. It's really good. But to piggyback off of what you just said, as parents, we definitely need to do our due diligence to be more in tune and listen and make our kids feel, actually, they need to know that they're in a judgment-free zone. Mm-hmm. So when my youngest started having these episodes, yes, I wanted to do everything that I could to make sure he got the help that he needed. Right. And that's what we're doing now.
Good.
So, but yeah, that's kind of my story in a nutshell, as far as my upbringing and, what I went through, and then how I learned what I did about myself through my son, who, right, I will have to say, both of my children are amazing little warriors. They really are, because, I mean, we're talking about OCD, but there's so much more to mental health. So much. And I will tell you that we've been exposed to some different areas when it comes to mental health. And my kids are warriors, and they help me to keep going.
Kids are good for that.
They are. Yeah. But as a parent, I want to make sure they have that judgment-free zone, and that they grow up to be confident, and that they know it's okay not to be okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Quotes. I love it. I wonder if they've got that trademark so that they make like 10 cents every time somebody says that. If they don't, I've got to talk to Johnny about that, because that'd be brilliant. Yeah, because it makes sense. It just rolls off the tongue so easily. But for those of you guys who are wondering, like, okay, well, what does it's okay to not be okay? I'm a proud supporter of the organization called Hope for the Day. They are a 501c3 not-for-profit organization that is working actually to educate 20,000 in 2020. So they're bringing free mental health education to as many individuals as they possibly can. I want to say they can do it to the world, but they're being a little bit more like conservative at first. But no, they're a wonderful organization that's doing amazing work and has some truly incredible people behind them. But yeah, so I don't know why I went down that tangent, but I did anyways. Oh, and their motto is "It's okay to not be okay." And so with that being said, you gave us a lot of your story and kind of did a bit of a flyby and gave us the play-by-play, not highlight reel, but the life play-by-play reel. I don't know what the hell I was trying to say. Anyways, so as it specifically relates to you, because we could talk about our kids all day long, right? That's the joy of being a dad and a mom, respectively. But when it specifically came to you, we know, like, now that you know what you've suffered with, what were some of those things that you did maybe before you knew what was going on in order to manage the tendencies that you had and to kind of move through those uncomfortable times, right? Because I'm sure that there were moments of darkness and moments of obstacles that you faced. So what were those things that you did for you in those times?
Sure. So, yep, again, didn't know what it was. And because of the thoughts that I was having, to me, was very shameful and guilt-ridden. And anytime, I guess when you hear of people committing horrendous acts, and people are so quick to judge, and then you start having these crazy thoughts that say are maybe similar to some of these acts of crime that have been committed, you're like, oh no, I'm not talking about that, because people would judge me. But they were, again, unwanted thoughts. It's just like, okay, right. Why won't it go away? These thoughts will go away. So as I mentioned before, I would just, I am a believer, and I would just pray over and over and over again, please just take these thoughts from me. I don't want them. Just take them over. Until it got to the point where I was exhausted, and I would just find something to keep myself busy physically that would take my mind off of those thoughts. Basketball was another thing for me. I was very active in basketball, so playing basketball, practicing games, hanging out with friends. Like, anytime I was busy in that aspect, it was easier to not think about those things. It's usually when I found myself alone with downtime is when those thoughts would just pop out of nowhere. And
the alone ones are always the hardest.
Yeah. In general, with everything.
Yeah.
So, and then for me, praying shouldn't be a burden. And I knew that there was something wrong with that. It shouldn't be exhausting you to pray. So I knew something was off there. But I would still pray. But then I just started, visualizing, like I mentioned before, like if the thoughts would pop in my head, I would just visualize just pulling them out and throwing them out, and then I would move on. I don't know how else to explain it, but that seemed to be.
But no, that's what you did for you. And now, then the reason why we do this particular part of the episode this way is because there are other people out there that are listening or will listen at some point in the future and be like, huh, and gain like connection, because again, this community is all about proving that you're not alone. Mm-hmm. Proving that there are people who have felt what you felt and fear what you fear and have gone through what you're going through to an extent. I mean, everybody's journey is different, but we all face similar things. We all face similar hardships. We all face similar struggles. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter money. It doesn't matter creed. It doesn't matter color. It doesn't matter gender. It literally affects all of us. Yep. So if this helps those people who have maybe are where you were before you realize what happened, realize what's going on, and they hear this and be like, maybe I do need to go get help. Maybe they can reach out to you. Like what it does is it continues the conversation. Yeah. And what that continuation of the conversation does is it starts to break down the walls, and it starts to get people to know that they can have these conversations and not be judged. And if people judge them, they're talking to the wrong people.
Correct.
And they need to find somebody else, which is why I have my cell phone number and Instagram, because they can reach out to me. Not that by the way,
not an expert.
Disclaimer, I'm not an expert. I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a psychologist. I'm not a licensed clinical social worker. I'm none of those things. I'm just a human who gives a fuck and has a voice and has a bit of a platform and said, all right, nobody's talking about this, so I'm going to. And that's really where this whole show culminated, because it was March of 2018, and I was going to do a month of mental health awareness videos, right? Because I like alliteration, and it worked in my head. And then in the first episode with an old friend of mine, Joel, who hadn't a podcast for a while, it's kind of gotten socially quiet. I think he had some life stuff happen. But I'm like, wait a second, this is a lot like something I kind of conceptualized years previous in the way of an online book, where I would go in and write my story. You could go in and write yours. Eleanor could go in and write hers. There's another person that just joined us on Instagram. Could go in and write theirs. But the point is in order to write your story and to share your story, you'd have to read those who came before you. And that way, then you have the ability to frame your story in a way that allows you to get it out. And then, of course, I was a broke kid then. I didn't have the money to create an online interactive book. So I said, I'll put a pin in this one. And then 5 years later, I was like, oh, wait, that's what this is. And now we are, again, you're the 8th guest in the 4th season. So, I mean, do the math. Each season's had 16 episodes. I can't do math in my head like that. But you all get it. Like, this is a community of like-minded people who have gone through shit and understand that it's okay to go through shit and still be happy. It's still okay. And it's still okay to have bad days and have off days and just exist, because sometimes that's what happens. You don't have the greatest of days. And to know that you're not alone when you face it, that there are people who care, that the world is changing slowly, but it's changing. And I actually want to, can I take a quick moment? I want to publicly say something that I've alluded to on a couple of occasions, and I made a pretty emotional video about a week and a half or so ago, 2 weeks ago. I lost a friend 2 weeks ago, which is why I was all pumped and ready, and I was like, yes, we're going to finish out the year strong. We're going to be like 20 episodes deep in this season. I'm kidding. We're not. There's not enough weeks in the year and time, but I typically obviously air these things on Tuesdays, sometimes do Wednesday, occasional Wednesday if guests need it for their schedule. But this has been the first time since that I can recall off the top of my head, since I was an adult, where I lost somebody that I was really close to. And I took a week to shut down. Of course, that happened the week of Thanksgiving here in the U.S. And then, this episode and in all other episodes moving forward, I want to honor Christian and the work that he did, an amazing musician. So what we're actually going to do, I didn't have this plan. I'm literally just pulling this out as we're talking because I felt called to do so. And this has been something that I haven't actively done up to this point. I've talked about it, but I've not held myself accountable to it. and I feel that I need to start doing so now. The purpose of the show is never to make money. I have not made a cent from this. I will continue to not take money from this, but there are amazing organizations who are fighting the fight and on boots on ground all over the world who are doing the hard work. I mean, Hope for the Day is just one example. I just happen to reference them because they're friends of mine and I believe in the mission and so on and so forth. But there are amazing organizations, not just here in the Chicago area, but all over the world who are stepping up to do the work and have the hard conversations. And I think it's time that we help them. And so what I'm actually going to do is tomorrow. So today is Tuesday, December 10th, Wednesday, November 11th. I will be putting out on all of my social media a link where I want anybody and everybody who hears this message and anybody who shares this, I want this to go around. We're going to start taking donations here, but these donations aren't going to me. These donations will not go to fund any part of the show or any potential staff or anybody that come on down the pipeline. What happens is these funds will go to help mental health organizations around the world. So we can actually, the audio platform that hosts the audio version of this when it's live is a platform called Anchor. I actually have had it set up for a year and I've just never really talked about it, but feeling the moment to talk about it now. So sorry, I'm stealing a little bit of your thunder right now.
Oh.
You said you were going to make me talk, and now you just
I did
inadvertently. But through the platform on Anchor, we have the ability to do a couple of things. One is support the show. You can do a monthly contribution, a single time contribution, wherever. But for everybody who makes a contribution to the show, I'm going to match it. And I'm not even saying that I have enough to where I could potentially match it if we get a whole bunch, and I'm going to be like, but point being is I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I want you guys to support it, and I'm going to do it too. So for any and every dollar that comes into the show, not only is that dollar going out to support mental health education and prevention and outreach around the world, it's also going to go and I'm going to match it. So I probably should have put a little bit more thought into that before publicizing that. But the fact of the matter is I'll do it. And I want us to break this stigma wide open. I don't want to lose anybody else. I don't want anybody else to feel what the family of Christian and the friends of Christian have felt. And I didn't even know them that well. I don't want my kids to grow up feeling what I felt. I don't want Kristen's kids to grow up feeling this. I want to live in a world where we can end this shit. And I know we can. We've banded together for worse things in the world. So let's band together for something that's actually going to create an impact and change the world. In addition to that, I am also in the process of working on a community-based technology that's going to provide resources when you need it and where you need it. There will be more on that as you can imagine, it's a massive undertaking. But there's going to be more on that coming throughout 2020 and into obviously 2021. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's just like this work isn't going to end. And anything and everything I can do to continue the necessary movement, I'm going to. Yeah. So there. All right. Stepping off the high horse again.
You're gonna make it happen.
We are making it happen. This is not a me thing.
Yes.
And then the other thing. So I'm literally creating unintentional sponsors for the show. Like Hope for the Day sponsors it. I don't care if they want to or not. They are. Because I'm going to talk about them. I'm aware of their stuff. Also, I want to say thank you to Molly and Chris from a show called The Social Movement. This is another part of the whole puzzle that is going to be, you guys are going to hear more about in the coming next year and a half. But I was blessed to be invited to take part in filming of their season 2, which takes place next summer, under the simple question of, if you had 4 days to change the world, what would you do? And I said I'd end suicide. So we're going to work on that. Obviously, I can't really do a whole lot with it because we haven't filmed it yet, because the filming takes place in Montreal in June of 2020. But we can, I feel that it's getting closer. And yeah, so I'm going to stop talking about me again.
You're not talking about you.
I know. But I want to spin this conversation back into you. So with everything that you've gone through and those things that you did to kind of navigate it, hanging out with friends, just busy working, like going into what you needed to do for you, were there any things that were, now that you know what you had to suffer through, is there anything that you've done over the years? Ooh, I flipped my camera around. That was fun. Is there anything that you've done looking back? Were there any things that you did to cope that you didn't realize that you were using to cope, but now that you look back at it, you're like,
so no, well, like you said, everything I did, it was a coping mechanism. Basically, when you are seeking professional help and you get that professional help, they help you manage your compulsions by practicing healthy coping mechanisms.
Right.
I think the most helpful coping mechanism for me, and still continues to be, is just that quick visualization of just throwing the thought out of my head and knowing that that's not me. That's right. Another big thing with OCD is people realizing and understanding those thoughts. It's not part of them. It doesn't make who they are. They're just thoughts.
Right.
And what was somewhat funny about that is, as we were having that conversation with my youngest, part of the process, we are going through cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And part of that process is to help people understand the difference between these thoughts and who you are. You give your OCD a name, call it a monster or call it some crazy name. So as we were explaining that to my youngest, we were asking him, what would you like to name OCD? And because he's a very literal child, very, very literal, he said, just name it OCD. That's what it's called. So it's OCD to him. So, but the beautiful thing about therapy is you're working with somebody who knows how to help you through it, and they meet you on your level, because everybody's different. So
everybody's different, but we all face a lot of the same shit.
Yeah. And I do want to say, as you are kind of going through some of these feelings and struggles, I think as humans, we tend to compare our struggle against other struggles. It's called
comparisonitis.
Yep. Well, and you're invalidating the feelings that you're feeling. You need to understand. Yeah. You need to understand that those are your feelings and your journey is different from theirs. And it's okay to have your feelings. Right.
And it just because it's not more visible doesn't mean that it's not hurting.
Correct.
And just because it's more, I mean, I've got some resources that I can provide too, stuff that Hope for the Day has given me up to this point. But when you look at it from a perspective of everything's on a spectrum and everybody's is different, but that's okay. And what's trauma to me is not trauma to you. And I understand that now. And having the ability to understand that your journey, while similar, is yours. And you have the ability to identify and go through and move beyond a lot of these moments of darkness, because all of this stuff is not necessarily preventable, but you can get help for it. And it's okay to get help. And I mean, I went through a lot of that earlier when I had to go after and actually get a therapist for a lot of the stuff that I was struggling with just this year. And yeah. So I want to hear about the exciting things now. What? All right, yes. All right. So we've talked darkness, we've talked obstacles, we've talked the struggles, we've talked the stuff. I pontificated a little bit as well. but what's those exciting things in your world right now? Or what are you looking forward to most in the last 21 days of 2020 or 2019 going into 2020?
I'm going back to my kids on this one.
All right, Mom.
I know. I am just so excited to watch them grow and see them mature. And with this whole mental health, mental illness, they have been so good about taking in that information, taking a step back. And I don't know how to explain it. I'm so excited to watch them grow and help other people because I fully believe that's exactly what they're going to do.
Yep.
I fully believe both of them. Each one of them are living testimonies. They're too young to realize that, but as they grow older and looking back in hindsight, I'm so excited to see what great men they're going to turn out to be. That's my excitement. Yes, I'm being a mom.
Okay, Mom. So is there anything else that's exciting? Anything else that you're looking forward to going into 2020? Maybe some of the things that you're working on?
What I'm working on, yes, I am working on getting to a place where I've got more balance. Mm-hmm. My balance is kind of out of whack right now, but I am optimistic.
It is with a lot of people right now.
I'm very optimistic.
And Mercury being in retrograde is screwing a lot of people up.
Working on that. So right. I'm optimistic about creating more balance and getting to a place where I can dive back into writing children's books. I actually did start on a children's book, but I need to look back around, finish it, and then illustrate it, and then go from there. So I am excited about that.
Nice. I like the sound of that. Actually, I've got an illustrator I could potentially connect you with if you need it.
I'm going to attempt to do it. I like to draw.
All right. Okay,
but
cool.
Yes, I'll take it anyway because, right. Yeah.
I just random thought process. Awesome, my friends. Well, give you a little bit of an update on the status of the Open Heart Collective. So next week we have our final episode for 2019 because I'm taking the following 2 weeks off for holidays because, of course, being that Christmas and New Year's this year fall on. Christmas Eve is on a Tuesday and New Year's Eve is on a Tuesday. And I love you guys and I love this show, but I also know that I'm a realist, and at least those of us here stateside that celebrate these particular holidays and around the world that celebrate these particular holidays, you need to not be paying attention to me and you need to go spend time with your family. And if you don't have people that you can spend time with, reach out, find somebody hell, send me a message. I'm sure my house will be more than open. And because I know that there are certain people that don't have family around and don't have people that they can go and spend the holidays with, and I'm cognizant of that. So in the event that you are one of those people who doesn't have anybody that they can go to, my door is always open. Obviously, you just have to get here, which may be an issue. So we'll find that. We'll play that one as it likes. But and then we'll be back the second week of 2020 with an all new episode. So one more episode between now and the end of 2019. And then I could spend an hour talking about all the exciting stuff that's lined up for 2020. So I'll save that for like the next 25 Instagram posts. But so any final words of wisdom? Any one last thing if this was your last thing that you had to tell somebody, what would it be? No, wait. I'm okay. So you guys know Lewis Howes. I'm trying to find what's the thing at the end that he always said. I'm trying to find my version. So if you were staring at your future self, of course, Instagram ended. It didn't even give me the warning. Of course. So Instagram's just going to have to tune to Facebook to hear the rest of this, or just the YouTube video or the audio at the end. So if you, what would be one thing that you would say to all of those out there who are struggling? Just one thing, one phrase, one thing. What would it be? Your one thing.
Keep going. I say that over and over and over again. Just keep going, because eventually the light at the end of the tunnel will start to become visible. Keep going.
I love it. All right, my friends. So I'm going to end it as I've ended every single video for the last, I can't even remember how long. And it is as follows. Number one is to number one is to find happiness in every day, in whatever way that you need to do it for you. Find happiness at least once every single day. Number two is to have fun, because goddamn, life's way too short. Smile, laugh, go do crazy shit as long as you're safe.
And legal.
Whatever that means to you, right? Everybody's definition of fun is a little bit different. And then third, work, because anything and everything in life that's worth it takes a sincere level of blood, sweat, and tears to get it done. And along the way, make sure that you remind yourself to take time to breathe. Mm-hmm. Even if you just say that word once a day, it does that really cool thing where you actually breathe while saying the word breathe. So just write it down in your journal, breathe. And then it's funny, as you're writing it down, you'll even breathe. It's interesting. But and we'll be back next week with an all-new episode. So thank you, as always, for everybody who's been a part of this community over the last year and a half. It's been an incredible adventure that I am excited to see into the new decade. And it's one of the great things from this past decade, or this current decade, that I am really, truly looking forward and taking into the new one. And yeah, so see you guys soon. All right.